A very warm welcome back to your latest industry developments. In today's proceedings, there's focus on a relatively new airline that is suspending scheduled passenger flights, an order termination, and an airline expanding its route network towards the United States. Let's focus on that order termination, where, according to new court rulings and reports by Flight Global, you may recall Lynx Air, a now former Canadian airline, has agreed with Boeing to terminate its remaining contract. As part of the previously agreed contract, the 737 MAX was expected to be a cornerstone of Lynx Air's future. However, due to several pressures, the company collapsed in February 2024. Such a contract reportedly included 40 aircraft, with the lease of further units. Only a tiny percentage of these aircraft were ever delivered to Lynx Air. Ultimately, the Canadian company only really had a brief time in the industry and therefore couldn't acquire the entirety of this order. Legal proceedings needed to be followed to determine the fate of these aircraft types that remained undelivered. In some instances, such contractual changes can actually cause significant turbulence, with potentially not all parties coming to an approved middle ground and a general acceptance of a way forward. In the case of Lynx Air, however, and alongside Boeing, they say that the termination was fair and ultimately came less than a month after Lynx Air ended up suspending their operations. Additionally, and a factor maybe not so much explored, is it was very important for Lynx Air to consider their own company's shutdown when figuring out the intricacies of terminating this contract. Generally speaking, for Lynx Air, what they wanted to do was ensure that a deal aligned with their ambition of making the shutdown proceedings, if you will, as easy as possible. Obviously, if it becomes more complicated, it could cost more money, take up more resources, and the winding down is something you want to do as best as possible and also as soon. So, the collapse of Lynx Air. They formally ceased their flying schedule following the arrival of a last flight on Sunday, February 25th. This decision came as Lynx Air said it was unable to secure crucial investments to sustain its long-term operations, which would obviously also enable future growth. From its conception, though, the airline did battle with competition and other factors that meant its place within the industry, especially that of the Canadian sector, wasn't always guaranteed. As time progressed, we did only see pressures begin to mount to really an uncontrollable level. And with the general inability to secure funding, there was really no possible means of continuing to fly into the future. Ultimately, as well, with the failed tie-up of Flair and Lynx, which was rumoured to have occurred the same week as Lynx announced its shutdown, it seemed there was no other alternative for the company. At its point of closure, Lynx Air left with one of the youngest fleets in North America. This extends to really also the world, with the 737 MAX jets. The MAX was intended to be the primary aircraft of use, with more units being delivered as time progressed. Obviously, these plans were not something that was able to be followed through with. And the focus on, should I say, airline troubles continues, with new Pacific Airlines announcing the formal suspension of scheduled passenger flights barely years after it was able to launch them. The carrier, formerly known in what you may refer to them as still as Northern Pacific, initially set its sights on services to Asia from Anchorage. It targeted a model that was similar to Iceland Air with a view to make air travel cheaper between the two regions. However, with the closure of Russian airspace, this dramatically changed their trajectory, and the prospective airline struggled to launch. An airspace closure, it is important to note, actually came only months after its formal launch in January 2022, so it certainly tipped their plan on its head. Would it have been successful? Those are the many ifs, buts, and maybes, but at least they had a business plan. In the subsequent months, executives scrambled to find ways to get the 757s, which remembered they had already secured, painted, and configured, in the air. We saw rumours of service towards Mexico, service in the Pacific, and many other areas. These were all explored, but to seemingly no avail. After much deliberation, the airline set its sights on using Ontario in California as basically a makeshift base, with flights to Las Vegas beginning. The hope was the airline could offer scheduled services to some favoured locations, maybe once or twice a week, and in some cases, such as Vegas, acting as a weekend trip. While the airline was able to get airborne, its overall schedule reflected nothing of what it had initially targeted, and many began to question the airline's true identity. This questioning only increased when a name change was required to New Pacific Airlines. Now, scheduled flights will cease, as charter flights become the new focus for the company that has ultimately not only struggled to sell seats, but also obtain any market share. This is a move that many probably are hardly shocked by, as since its conception, it did look like it was struggling. Executives have carefully created, though, a new partnership with Aviation Group, this being a Florida-based company known for its private aviation services. And according to key executives, while we are seeing scheduled passenger flights end, they will not cease flying and they will focus on these charter operations. But again, and a common theme with New Pacific Airlines is it's left more questions than answers. Rob McKinney says he now wants to set his sights on redefining the standards of aviation services and elevating the travel experience. But with an old fleet and tired 757s, while a fantastic aircraft, you've definitely got to see alarm bells ringing. The future of New Pacific Airlines certainly up in the air, and we'll have to keep an eye on how that plays out. On to the final story. Taiwan-based airline Starlux has announced finally plans to expand its network in the United States, with the upcoming launch of a new service. Starlux says that from the 16th of August, the airline will deploy a non-stop flight from Seattle to Taipei, with bookings now available for customers and thrice-weekly flights offered. The Airbus A350 that has been selected features 4 cabin classes, but they will face considerable competition on the route, which they'll need to be wary of. While being a new airline certainly has its advantages, it also comes with risks. With time, the company will hope to cement itself as a critical choice in the segment, and it's got Alaska Airlines on its side when in April 2023, the pair signed a partnership that would see Starlux become a global partner. North America has been hot on Starlux's radar for some time. The only limitation in them expanding there was the aircraft available for the relatively new airline. Following more aircraft orders and your subsequent deliveries, we've seen further units from the A350 series make their way to the airline. That has meant that expansion to new cities has been possible. Once launched, the flight to Seattle is set to complement existing service to Los Angeles and San Francisco. These 2 routes both began in 2023, and they've got their sights set further on North America. This can include cities in the United States, but also Canada. Similar, though, to the expansion towards Seattle, further cities are expected to come in due course. You'll require new aircraft first before anything is set to happen. That is going to conclude today's aviation news recap. If you have any thoughts, you're more than welcome to drop them down below in the comments. Thank you very much for your support here on the channel. It is greatly appreciated. Take care, do be safe, and I'll see you same place, same time tomorrow for your latest industry news.